We're doing another mock draft coming right up. What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Gridiron Fantasy Football Podcast. Today is Saturday, August 29th, 2020, and of course, I am Chip. I'm your host, and thank you so much for joining us today. If you're a new listener, thank you so much for joining us as well. Please share this podcast. You can find us over on Apple and Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. If you'd like to watch us, you can watch over on YouTube at Gridiron Fantasy Football. So please don't forget to hit subscribe to support the show and so you don't miss another episode. Now, I hope everyone is having a great weekend. Today, I am doing another mock draft. Today, it's going to be a half PPR 12-team mock draft. And if you've been following the podcast for the last few weeks, I've been doing a mock draft every week. I think it's crucial to do mock drafts based on how your league is set up. I've done a 10-team, 2-quarterback draft. I've done a standard, 16-team draft. So today I'm doing a half-point PPR draft. This is something that practice makes things not perfect, obviously, but it really helps you know when you have to pivot. It definitely prepares you on knowing when you have to go for a player, when you can sit back, because you can never predict what people are going to do in the draft, especially in snake drafts. Now, if you're in an auction league, it's totally different mindset, totally different strategies, because you can buy any player that you want. But for snake drafts, sometimes you have to go with your gut. Sometimes you have to go with, if there's runs on certain players, you're gonna have to try to find ways to pivot or just be patient and let players fall to you. But it's one of those things where it's hard to do, especially when there's a player you want. You don't want to take them too early, but that's why you do mock drafts. And I think, it's super crucial because, this weekend and next weekend are the two biggest weekends for fantasy football drafts. And I hope that all the information that you've gotten from me has been beneficial. Seeing me do the mock drafts and everything, I hope that's been very, beneficial for you. I'm doing my own draft right now. So if you listen to last week's podcast, I'm in the middle of doing right now I'm in one of my leagues is 11 player keeper league. That it's a quote unquote dynasty league, so I can keep 11 players. And then we pretty much draft a lot of rookies and bench players. And so far we just finished our third round. And, I was able to get Jonathan Taylor. We play in a 2-quarterback league. It's a standard league. So I grabbed Gardner Minshew as my third quarterback. And then I just picked up Zach Moss. And I'll kind of tell you that in a minute when I go over the news. But, so, even there's a lot of players that I wanted in this draft, and I didn't get them. So, like I said, you never know what potential players the fantasy owners in your league know about certain players. And you think somebody doesn't know about somebody until they get drafted, and then it kind of ruins your vibe a little bit. But it's one of those things where that's why you practice. That's when you have to figure out when you have to go for a player or whatnot. So with that being said, let's go into some of the news. Right now, Bears head coach Matt Nagy has said that he's not gonna name a starter until right before week 1. This is obvious. I mean, this is pretty much strategy in a sense, because obviously you want to see how the competition plays out until the actual season starts. Now, there's a lot of rumors going around that Mitchell Trubisky is actually performing pretty well, that he's able to hold off Nick Foles. But then, obviously if they don't name a starter right now, there's probably still some apprehension on naming him the starter. It's pretty evident that they're probably leaning more towards Mitch Trubisky, because the fact that they haven't had no one's had a normal offseason. So I can see Mitch Trubisky being the starter at first, and then Nick Foles, taking over right in somewhere in the beginning of the season. But this is one of those things to pay attention to. If you're playing in a 1-quarterback league, this news really is not relevant, only because you're not going to draft Nick Foles or Mitch Trubisky anyways. He's the guy. Those are going to be two guys that are going to be on the waiver wire. That may be a bye week fill-in, or it's going to be an emergency quarterback if you have somebody go down. So, but if you're in a 2-quarterback league, Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles will be drafted just because you need the depth. So it's just one of those things that you just have to pay attention to and see what happens. In San Francisco, it looks like, it's not, this is not obvious. This is obvious news. It's Raheem Mostert has continued to be the starter in 49ers camp. We all knew that from the end of last season and when they played in the Super Bowl, Raheem Mostert had been great going into the playoffs. I mean, he was getting the most snaps, who's getting the most carries. He looked the most electric, and the fact that there's news coming out of there, San Francisco, that he's becoming the starter or will be the starter, is getting the most reps. I mean, that's obvious because everyone's predicting that he's going to be the starter. So we don't know how the timeshare is going to be between those running backs, but right now, Raheem Mostert is going to be labeled as the starter. And then in New York, two things: the Jets they traded for Kalen Ballage, which is the running back that was on the Dolphins last year, for a late round pick. I don't know, it doesn't make any sense. They have Le'Veon Bell and they got Frank Gore, so they add Kalen Ballage to that. So that's kind of a weird trade to me, but it's one of those things where you just kind of go with it, right? So and then also looks like the Jets are going to have, based on the reports, that they're going to try to do a 60-40 split between Le'Veon Bell and Frank Gore, which in essence they're trying to keep Le'Veon Bell fresh, but it doesn't really make sense to me. I don't understand. Like, I have not understood this all offseason on why all these reports are coming out that they're going to give Frank Gore so much work. He is definitely a effective back in short yardage and goal line work, but so is Le'Veon Bell. So I just don't know what's going on with New York. I did have Le'Veon Bell as one of my bounce back players for this year, but the more news that comes out, I'm getting really nervous about Le'Veon Bell and what he could bring to fantasy owners and the value that he has, because this all could be coach talk. There's a lot of smoke that goes on during the offseason, try to keep teams from understanding what they're going to do on their offense. But I don't know, it's been too much news going around that Le'Veon Bell is not going to be like a workhorse running back. So I don't know, Le'Veon Bell, that's a high risk, high reward pick to me. And I'm not sure. I was targeting Le'Veon Bell in some of my drafts, and I don't know I think I'm pivoting because that makes me nervous. And then this makes me nervous as well. Tampa Bay's running back Ronald Jones was sidelined at practice with a left foot injury. He was walking around. He had it wrapped up in ice. The fact that there was no news so far that I've seen that he's been in a walking boot or he's supposed to miss significant time. But you do have to wonder, you got to see what the practice reports say in the next coming weeks, in the next couple of days, because the season starts in a couple of weeks, and you want to see Ronald Jones, at practice, and then you have to figure out, okay, if Ronald Jones is hurt, LaShawn McCoy's value goes up a tad bit, and Keyshawn Vaughn, there's maybe some potential there, but I think right now, if they're saying it's not serious, he wasn't in a walking boot, there's nothing reported that he was in a walking boot. It just could have been he just kind of tweaked his foot a little bit and he'll be fine. But I'm still drafting Ronald Jones before LaShawn McCoy and Keyshawn Vaughn. I just think that Rojo is getting a little bit more under the radar now, and it's going to be interesting to kind of see how I look forward to him trying to break out this year. I think he has the potential, but obviously he has to stay healthy. And someone who's not staying healthy is Lions running back DeAndre Swift. He left practice this week with a lower leg injury. Obviously you want to, if you're a high drafted rookie, you want to have all the snaps you can in practice. And there's a lot of talk that he is going to be the starter in Detroit, but obviously you can only do that if you're at practice and you're taking snaps. Now you have Kerryon Johnson, in there now making, taking more of the snaps in practice. So hopefully DeAndre Swift can get healthy and back on the field, because he is expected to be that workhorse running back in Detroit. But just like Ronald Jones, you have to be healthy in order to do that. So hopefully he gets healthy soon. And another turn of events in New England. The reports coming out that Sony Michel now has taken all the first team reps over Damian Harris. Because for the last few weeks, when Sony Michel was on PUP, Damian Harris was getting the first team reps, which would make sense because he's the back that's going to be on the field on early downs, with James White coming on third down, and they have Rex Burkhead and all that as well. But I still believe in Damian Harris. I still think that potential for him to break out is there. But this is why I don't like New England running backs. I like Damian Harris for the value that you could bring, but there's so many times in all these years that Bill Belichick has been the coach for the Patriots, we never really had a running back that was the workhorse running back in the last few years. It's always been one guy 1 week will be super, effective, and then they bench that player and they bring someone else in. And I just think it's the system where it doesn't matter the running back, you're going to be productive in that system. And right now, I was all in on Damian Harris, but now with this report with Sony Michel, makes me wonder, like, is he now the starter again? So, we'll see, but it's something to monitor. I mean, it's like I said, another high risk, high reward draft pick. You're probably not going to pick Sony Michel or Damian Harris early in your draft anyways, but if he's one of your last few picks, yeah, take a risk on him. But I just think that I want to see more information come out. I just want to see games now. I want to see how these players play in a full game, full contact, everything, because that's going to make things a lot more evident for the people who are trying to predict who's going to be the starter in New England. And then another story coming out of 49ers camp is that George Kittle is dealing with hamstring tightness. Now, obviously, this is nothing that's too serious right now because it wasn't a strain. He didn't have a significant injury. He was dealing with some muscle tightness. But anytime anything's doing with the hamstring, there's potential from tightness to actual muscle strain. And that's something that you want to be cautious of. And I'm not saying don't draft George Kittle. You're going to draft George Kittle. But it always puts that little red flag up when you see anybody dealing with hamstring injuries or any type of muscle strain or anything like that, because you don't want to risk a high draft pick for a player that's not going to be available to you. So, that's one of those things where you just have to monitor it. And right now, like, I'm still drafting George Kittle. Muscle tightness means, to me, that's not anything serious enough for me to not draft him. But it's just something that you just have to think about when you're drafting a player, because George Kittle, you're going to have to draft him super high. So do you draft George Kittle over, a number one elite wide receiver, or you go for a tight end like George Kittle? So it's up to you, but it's one of those things where you just got to be careful of and listen to the news and all that. And then in Cincinnati, Joe Mixon hasn't been practicing for the last few practices. Apparently he's dealing with migraine issues. Obviously, this is not something you want to hear from a player of this caliber. Migraines, I've never had a migraine, but I've had patients who've had migraines. These migraines can just ruin your day, right? So if he's dealing with migraines on a continuous basis, like, does that make you concerned, again, with it being such a high violent sport, contact, blunt force trauma to the head every single time he gets the ball and gets tackled? Like, are these migraines going to be something that he's going to deal with throughout the whole entire season? So if that's the case, obviously, do you pivot? Do you still just, do you trust it and then draft Joe Mixon? Like, these are all the questions now that come up when you see players dealing with certain injuries that are kind of random, like a migraine, because migraines can be super severe, and it could, like I said, it could knock you out for days. So hopefully he's healthy when the season starts, and hopefully it's just something that he can recover from and not be too much of an issue going forward. And in Buffalo, Devin Singletary apparently is dealing with fumbling issues. Now, everything in Buffalo has been hyped up with Zach Moss being the guy who's shining in Buffalo training camp, and you got everything on the wrong side of Devin Singletary not even, performing up to his capability. So it just seems like there's been good news about Zach Moss and bad news about Devin Singletary. I just drafted Zach Moss in my Dynasty League because I think he has potential to be a breakout. I think that if he gets the opportunity, if the stuff that's being said in training camp is real, I think Zach Moss has the potential to be someone that could help you win a championship this year, because he's talented. He's a bigger back. He's a power runner, but he can also catch the ball really well out of the backfield. And that's a good combo for running back. So, I still think, obviously, I think Devin Singletary is still the guy. I think he has to continue to make really bad mistakes in order for Zach Moss to take his spot. But, if Zach Moss is going to have that Frank Gore type of position, Zach Moss does have some appeal, especially even in the flex play and good matchups. I think he definitely, it can be someone who can be drafted late in your draft. And then last, Seattle Seahawks coach Pete Carroll has said that Carlos Hyde will be a big factor for them in their offense. Looks like, based on the reports that I'm reading, that Chris Carson's been sidelined. He's dealing with some family issues again, or still, and he hasn't been practicing, so obviously all the reps are going to Carlos Hyde. Rashad Penny's not practicing because of the injury. They do have DJ Dallas, who's the rookie that they drafted. So it looks like, Carlos Hyde is one of those guys that you can probably maybe draft. If you're drafting Chris Carson, I think Carlos Hyde is a guy that you should handcuff him with, because there's a chance that if he's missing more time, that Carlos Hyde is going to be the guy that could fill in and could give you some good weeks. So that's the news. It's a lot to digest. I mean, especially on weekends like this where drafts are going to happen. So this news and paying attention to the news is really crucial because you'll never know when something breaks where a player gets injured and it's a season-ending injury. It happens every year, but always pay attention to the news. So with that being said, let's jump right into the draft. Just a quick reminder before we jump into the mock draft, I am still taking submissions for the Adam Thielen autographed jersey giveaway. The terms are really simple. All I want you to do is go over to YouTube, hit subscribe, go over to the podcast, hit subscribe, and then leave a review of the podcast. Then once you do that, please screenshot those things and then email me at chip@gridironfantasyfootball.com. And once I receive that email, I will email you back letting you know you've been entered into that giveaway. It's been great. I've had submissions so far, so I'm still taking those submissions. Like I said, I will announce the winner right before the season. So I'm going to do this for a couple weeks. So I'll do another announcement in the next podcast on Tuesday. But just know that it's just a free jersey. It's a jersey that I had with Adam Thielen, and I want to give it away to one of the listeners that are supporting this podcast. I mean, I appreciate all the support I've been getting, so I just want to make sure that I say that in the beginning of the podcast so that's still going on. And like I said, I'll make that announcement right before the season. And so with that, let's jump into the mock draft. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the draft board on the screen. Right now, this mock draft is a 12-team half PPR mock draft, and I have the number one slot, and that was randomized. That wasn't something I chose. It was something that I tried to do, just complete random draft positions. But like I've been saying with mock drafts, this is a great way to practice. It's good to look at different mock drafts and do different mock drafts because every mock draft is going to be different. You never know how things are going to play out. So with that being said, let's start the draft. So obviously I have the number one pick. Logic tells you that you take the number one player, which is Christian McCaffrey. So that's what I'm going to do right here and grab Christian McCaffrey number one. And it's interesting that Ezekiel Elliott went number two. Then you have Saquon Barkley, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, and then Michael Thomas went at the 1-6. Now, this has been the consensus for me with all the mock drafts that I do, even on my own, that Michael Thomas tends to be the sixth pick overall in almost all my drafts. You have the top five running backs that go, and then there's that tier break on should I take the next running back or should I grab the number one receiver? And in most mock drafts, around 6 and 7, depending on how big the mock draft is, if it's a 10-team, 12-team, or 16-team league, Michael Thomas tends to go right after that fifth running back goes off the board. So that's been the one consistent thing that I've seen in these mock drafts. And then you have Josh Jacobs go right after him, Derrick Henry, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Miles Sanders, Nick Chubb, and then Devontae Adams closes out the first round at the 112. And then on the turnaround, you had Tyreek Hill. Both top quarterbacks went. Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson went back-to-back. Then you had back-to-back receivers go with Chris Godwin and Julio Jones. And then a run on running backs again. So you had Drake, Connor, Carson, and Jones go. Now this is my turnaround, my pick. So I'm at the 212. And obviously with this being a PPR league, I try to get as many running backs that I can that are heavy, in the receiving game. So Austin Eckler, I don't think Austin Eckler has been talked about enough over, in the offseason. Like, maybe it's just me, but I try not to watch a lot of other fantasy football, shows or listen to podcasts. I don't want to dilute my knowledge and my feel on certain players, but, maybe that's why I'm not hearing a lot of Austin Eckler, but I like Austin Eckler. I think that, he's a great PPR running back. He may not get a lot of rushing yards, but he's a great receiver. So having Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler on my team, I love those two picks. And now this is where I have to make a decision. Do I want to go receiver or do I want to go tight end or grab another running back? Because I like going running back heavy in all my drafts if I can, if there's enough talent there. So I have to make a choice. Now, none of the running backs here that are available I like. I know Le'Veon Bell is there, but I was saying in the beginning of the podcast that there's too much unknown with what's going on in New York, so I'm not going to touch Le'Veon Bell here. When it comes to wide receiver, I have I have Kenny Golladay, Mike Evans, Adam Thielen, Amari Cooper, Allen Robinson, Cooper Kupp. This is kind of tough for me because I'm not a big fan of Kenny Golladay. Next week, once I drop another podcast on Tuesday, I'll be dropping my sleepers for 2020. From the rest of the week, I'm gonna do would you rather series that will be on YouTube only, and it kind of goes over Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones because they both have comparable stats, and you're spending a lot more money on Kenny Golladay when production is there with Marvin Jones. I know the ceiling's a lot higher with Kenny Golladay, but when it comes to overall production, I like Marvin Jones a lot. So it doesn't make sense for me to get Kenny Golladay right here. So then I'm gonna do this and look at tight end. I have the choice of Travis Kelce, George Kittle, or Mark Andrews. I think I'd rather have Travis Kelce here than any of the receivers that are available, just because of the talent that is. So I've never drafted, in any of the mock drafts, I've never drafted a tight end this early. So I'm gonna do it now, and I'm gonna take Travis Kelce. So I got him at the 3-1, and obviously Kenny Golladay was after that. Then you had Todd Gurley, Melvin Gordon, Adam Thielen, Le'Veon Bell, Mike Evans, David Johnson, Leonard Fournette, George Kittle, Calvin Ridley, then Allen Robinson. That rounds out the third round. The fourth round starts off with Jonathan Taylor, and then after that, nothing huge, surprising to me. I mean, I guess Raheem Mostert going at the 410 was a little high, I think, for him. But then DK Metcalf went right before me. So now I have to make a decision on running back or receiver. I have a back-to-back pick, so it doesn't really matter who I choose here. And then again, Amari Cooper, that's another name to me that I just kind of worry about. I don't know. There's a guy that he can have blow-up games, but Michael Gallup, honestly, is the same situation with Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones. You got Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. Do I choose Amari Cooper here, or do I get somebody else a little bit later that could get the same production? I'm not using the same draft capital on someone like Amari Cooper. But the thing is here, I got back-to-back picks. Running back wise, not anybody who sticks out enough. Like Kareem Hunt's there. I think Kareem Hunt's gonna have a better year than people think. I just know if I don't pick someone that I really like here, I'm not gonna get him on the turnaround because there's gonna be so many picks before me. So wide receiver, I really like Terry McLaurin. And Amari Cooper's there. I don't know. I think when it comes to this pick, I'm going to go ahead and take, I know that I just talked about Amari Cooper, but I'm going to go ahead and take Amari Cooper here only because he's the best player available right now. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to grab, I know there's on the board now, there's Tyler Lockett, DJ Shark, and then, or DJ Shark, T.Y. Hilton, and then Terry McLaurin. So what I'm going to do is, I like Terry McLaurin a lot. I'm just going to reach for Terry McLaurin here because I know he's not going to be there on the turnaround. So I'm going to go ahead and take Terry McLaurin and then see what happens. And then it followed up with Mark Andrews, Devin Singletary, DJ Chark, Dak Prescott, Stephon Diggs, Zach Ertz, Tyler Lockett, T.Y. Hilton, Russell Wilson, DeAndre Swift, and then Keenan Allen. What's crazy to me, honestly, is Keenan Allen being drafted so low. I understand there's a lot of transition going on in San Diego. I am having a hard time with my podcast today. In Los Angeles. So this is what happens, guys. When you do a podcast and you're doing it live, stuff like this happens. So, I mean, I've done enough of my takes here that I'm just going to go with it. That's what makes the podcast so great, is that it's unedited. And when I mess up, I mess up. And, it's hard. It's going to be hard to still transition that to the Los Angeles Chargers, especially now with the Las Vegas Raiders. That's just so weird to figure out and try to remember. But when you have a habit, you have a habit, and it's just one of those things where I'm always going to call the Chargers San Diego for some reason. But anyways, so let's see. Going into the 6th round, one of my targets, Marquise Brown, was taken at the 6'3", and then Kyler Murray went at the 6'6", and then J.K. Dobbins went at the 6'11". So now I have 2 good receivers, 2 good running backs. I got my tight end. So now I can pretty much draft upside, right? So I can go ahead and pick any player that I want that I think has tremendous upside in the running back or receiver position, and look at the running backs. There's not really anybody that sticks out to me. I mean, I really do like Zach Moss, to be honest with you, but I think that would be too much of a reach right now. I could go to quarterback. I could grab somebody like Drew Brees or Matt Ryan or Tom Brady. I mean, I have back-to-back picks, so I can do whatever I want here. But let's see. I'm going to go ahead and grab, let's see what's at running back. I mean, this is way too early for Zach Moss or Antonio Gibson, I think. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and grab Matt Ryan. I'm just going to grab my quarterback now and then and figure out, what else I'm going to do, because I just feel like there's not anybody that really sticks out to me. Maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a chance on, I already have Amari Cooper, so I'm not going to get Michael Gallup, but I'm going to grab Will Fuller. Even though he has some issues with soft tissue injuries, I'm going to go ahead and grab Will Fuller and then see how the draft, plays in after that. So Drew Brees went, Michael Gallup, Evan Ingram, Gronk went at the 7-5 before Darren Waller. That's weird. Then Jordan Howard went, Brandon Cooks, Tyler Boyd, James White, Julian Edelman, and Tevin Coleman rounded out the 7th round. All right, so now it's my pick again. Zach Moss was my target. Antonio Gibson was my target. They all went before my pick. And so now, this is the thing about 12-team leagues. You have to find players that you have hunches about that have tremendous upside, because when there's 12 teams, a lot more elite players get off the board a lot quicker. So this is where you have to kind of, comb through some of the rosters and the players just to kind of see who has the upside. And at running back, let's see. I only have Austin Eckler and Christian McCaffrey, so I need a running back. I need to grab somebody with some upside. And so I can choose between Sony Michel and Damian Harris. I got Cohen there. I can choose. And with David Montgomery being injured, Cohen is, for PPR formats, he's appealing here because he will maybe get more work in the receiving game if David Montgomery doesn't come back before week 1. And then Alexander Madison I think is good, but with Dalvin Cook, Alexander Madison is only really good if obviously Cook is out. But I think Madison does have some appeal flex-worthy wise, because I think Kareem Hunt's in the same position where they're in a run-heavy offense, and I think he has value, but I don't know if I have that much value in him right now. I want somebody who's always on the field or has a high snap count. And I'm going to take Cohen here because even last year with David Montgomery taking majority of the snaps from the running back position, Cohen definitely did well as a receiver. I mean, last year Cohen had more receptions than Kenny Golladay. That's why I didn't want to draft Kenny Golladay, because he had a lot of targets, but his catch percentage was very low. And when you have somebody like Tariq Cohen making more receptions and getting more receptions than a wide receiver, that's crazy. I think it was him and Leonard Fournette were the two running backs that had more receptions than Kenny Golladay, and that's why picking him makes me nervous so early, because he definitely, now with Matthew Stafford coming back, that changes a little bit, but I just want to see a number one receiver get somewhere in between like the 80, 85 receptions per year type of situation. But I know the targets will be there for Kenny Golladay. It's a matter of how that plays out. So now here I can choose a receiver or a running back again. I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna take the upside with Damian Harris. I know Sony Michel's on the board, but I'm going to take Damian Harris. I just have a gut feeling. I've had this gut feeling all offseason that Damian Harris is going to be the guy. So I'm going to take him, and this is, a late pick. This is all about depth. So if nothing happens with Damian Harris, I can release him and find someone else on the waiver wire. That's fine. But right now, your drafts are all about upside. What can you bring to the table in a sense of players that could potentially be league winners for you that no one's talking about? So that's where I make these picks and try to determine, who I want to go for. So now it's my pick again at the 10-12. Let's see who I can choose here. Maybe I'll go receiver. So here are some of my options. So I have options of Sterling Shepard, Justin Jefferson, and Jalen Reagor. I absolutely love Jalen Reagor. All the reports out of Philadelphia are saying that he's going to be the starting receiver, and he's gained the reps. He's working with the first team offense. So I like Sterling Shepard a lot as well. But with Golden Tate, you got Slate in there. You got Sterling Shepard there. You got Evan Ingram there. You got Saquon Barkley there. I just don't know if the receptions are going to be there. I want to go with somebody who's going to get the targets and be the number one, number two option, and that's Jalen Reagor. So I'm going to take him there at the 10-12. Then I get the pick at the 11-1. Let's see. Running back wise, is there anybody who has upside that's still left? I mean, I think the name that sticks out the most is, even though there's a lot of guys that are here that are ranked higher, I honestly like Carlos Hyde. I mean, Carlos Hyde right now could be one of those picks that may help your season in the beginning of the season, because if Chris Carson's still going to be out due to injury or any type of family and personal stuff that he's dealing with, then Carlos Hyde, he was a 1,000-yard runner last year. So he does have the opportunity, if Carson's out, to be a really good running back in the beginning of the season. So Carlos Hyde, not a bad pick. It's all about depth. And then let's see what, comes back my way. Anybody that with significance that got taken that I'm upset about. Not really everyone. There's a lot of defenses. Quarterbacks go this late. You got a kicker go. Justin Tucker went. Now it's my turn again at the 12-12. So this is going to be, I got 2 more picks before I choose my kicker and my defense. And honestly, right now, like I said, it's all about depth. So wide receiver wise, Preston Williams right there. I honestly love Preston Williams this year. I think that I was a little off on him because of the ACL and the fact that he's coming off of injury. But everything in the the reports in Miami are saying that he just looks awesome. So Preston Williams, I think, is going to outplay Devontae Parker, because even last year before he got injured, he led the team in targets. So, and in red zone targets. So I think he's 6'5", 220. This guy is a huge receiver. So to get him this late is by far an awesome pick. So I'm going to take Preston Williams right there. And then another guy that I'm going to take, let's see, I'm going to take Allen Lazard here too. Because Allen Lazard, who's the number 2? Like, Devontae Adams is number 1, obviously. And then there's not really a clear-cut winner for the wide receiver 2 position in Green Bay. So I'm going to take a chance on Allen Lazard here and see what happens. That, like I said, if these players don't play out or pan out for you, then you just drop them and you pick up somebody on the waiver wire that could be a free agent move that somebody's going to blow up this year that you're not going to know. And that's why we have our waiver wires every week, and that there's going to be guys that don't get drafted that are going to blow up. It happens every year. So it's a matter of, don't be worried about when it comes to this late in the draft. Just pick a guy with upside, and I think Allen Lazard has the upside. Now it's my turn to take a kicker. And obviously with the kickers, what I look for, when's their bye week, and are they on a high-powered offense? So right now, you got Zane Gonzalez, Arizona kicker. You have the Atlanta kicker, Koo, and then you got Jake Elliott. So from an offensive standpoint, I like the Atlanta kicker, right? So he has a Week 10 bye. He's on a team with a high-powered offense that scores a lot. So I'm going to take him over Zane Gonzalez. And then with my defense, generally this is what I look for when defenses. I look for, what's the Week 1 matchup? Who has the best matchup for Week 1? That's generally who I'm going to take. So I guess this year, whoever's playing the Bengals will be the case. But I don't have that on the top of my head right now, so I can't take that team up if I wanted to. But looking through some of the teams here, the team that sticks out the most, and I know about the most, is the Los Angeles Rams. They have the best strength of schedule. They have the easiest strength of schedule. So when it comes to the defense, I want to pick somebody who has a lot of upside, because right now, the Rams have the players in place to be a top defense. So I'm going to take the Rams here. And who knows? That could be the number 1 defense this year. I don't know that for sure, obviously, but why not take a defense that has some potential? And honestly, if it don't work out, you're gonna stream defense anyways. You're always gonna want to find the team that has the best matchup and stream that defense. And for me, that's whoever plays the Bengals, until we see what Joe Burrow does and how the offense plays out. I think that whoever plays the Bengals will be the best option per week. But that's to be determined based on how good the Bengals. We're going based on last year's schedule, so there's going to be teams that were really bad last year that are going to be decent this year, and vice versa. So that's it for the draft. So looking at my roster, I have Matt Ryan, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Amari Cooper, Terry McLaurin, Travis Kelce, Will Fuller. I have Young-Ho Koo, the kicker for the Atlanta Falcons. I have the Los Angeles Rams. Then I have Cohen, Damian Harris, Jalen Reagor, Carlos Hyde, Preston Williams, and Allen Lazard as my bench. And I think that's a good roster. I think that having the number 1 pick and then having to wait so many picks until I picked again, I think that's a solid roster that has a lot of upside, and that's what you want. You got to remember, when you do your drafts, it's not what you do in the drafts. Like, that's where you build the core of your team. but it's what you do throughout the whole entire season that gets you to the championship and then gets you to winning the championship is what you do throughout the season. Now, if you drafted very well and this is the number one team, great. Doesn't happen all the time, but just know that you have to make sure that, you know, you're just staying open to dropping players. Don't be afraid to drop players and add players. You know, that's why we have the fab budget. That's why we have free agency, just because you're going to add players to your roster every single week based on how players are performing. So, all right, so that's it. That's the mock draft. That's the results for a half-point PPR 12-team mock draft. Now, it wasn't perfect. You know, I had to reach for some players, but that's how it is. That's why you practice, because you want to know what players you can grab early or you have to grab early, because, you know, when you are in that first position like I was, it takes, you know, you have your main pick and you got 24 picks before your next pick. So that's where you have to reach for players sometimes if you really like a player. So that's what I did for me. So I took Terry McLaurin a little bit earlier because I know he wouldn't have been there if I had waited on him. There's some players I was surprised I got, like, you know, Preston Williams is one that I was surprised I got late in the draft, and then Jalen Reagor was another one. But, you know, this is why you practice. But I know that a lot of drafts are happening this weekend. I know I have my own draft tomorrow night, and then next weekend I have my main draft for my main league next Sunday, which will be interesting because we do auction drafts, and we usually do it a live in-person draft. So this year it's all on Zoom, and then we're going to be hanging out on Zoom, but then also we're using Yahoo as our auctioneer, so that there's nothing, if someone loses internet connection, there won't be an issue with that. But it's draft season. It's, you know, fun. It's one of those things, if you're really big into fantasy football, this is such a fun time of the year. And if you guys already done your draft, you know, please send a screenshot of your team to my email. So email me at, you know, at chip@gridironfantasyfootball.com, and I'll love to comment on your team, because this is why I do it. I want to, you know, I want to be involved with your guys' team and what you guys do in your leagues, and this is all fun for me. So I really appreciate the support. So that's why I just want to give you a reminder about the signed Adam Thielen jersey giveaway. That if you really want to be entered into this drawing, you know, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. You know, please subscribe to the podcast, and then please leave a review. And once you do that, just screenshot those things and send them over to chip@gridironfantasyfootball.com so you can have a chance to win that jersey. You know, it's just a way to appreciate, you know, show appreciation for the people who are following me. I like I said, it's been awesome, and I just want to say thank you. So that's it for today. You know, like I said, please like, comment, and share this podcast and the YouTube with your family and friends. And on my next episode, I will be talking about my sleepers of 2020, and this will be like that podcast should be up by Tuesday, and then I'll be doing a little mini series called Would You Rather, and that'll only be on YouTube. So, you know, that'll be going on later on in the week into next week before the season starts. So if you'd like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at the Gridiron Pod, and on Instagram at Gridiron Fantasy Football. So that's it for today. Have a great day, and thank you so much for listening. Take care.